But it's not just whatever people want to think my brand is what it is. That's not true. You've got to intentionally define what you want your brand to be, and then go all in on sharing it.
Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and in this episode, I'm talking to Tom and Mike, who are the two parts of the Biz Buds podcast. That's really hard to say. And today they are talking to us about personal branding for letterers and calligraphers. And Tom and Mike are both like individually amazing marketing experts and branding experts, but when you put them together, it's like magic. And this conversation has so much information in it if you're looking to learn about personal branding, specifically if you're an artist or calligrapher or a letterer. We got a lot to get through today. I suggest probably having a piece of paper because, like I said, there's a lot of information here. So let's just jump right in. Biz Buds, welcome to the show.
Hey,
Thank you.
I like that label, Mike. How are you feeling about that?
I like it. It works for me.
I mean, it's funny because I actually refer to people that I know from the business world as my Biz Buds. So it works for me too.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Keep it going. We need all the brand awareness we can get, Becca.
Okay, well, speaking of brand awareness, I feel like Tom, some of my audience probably knows you a little bit, but unless they're already following your podcast or follow you, they might not know Mike. So can we do a little, each of you take the mic for a second and run down who you are, what you do?
Sure, Mike, you want to take this one?
All right, I'll take it at the start. My name is Mike Janda. I am an agency veteran. I built an agency from 2002 to 2015 and sold my agency. And over the course of my agency, I wrote the book Burn Your Portfolio, which did well and helped me see my real passion about educating other creatives. And so when I wound down my agency time and left the agency that I sold to, I worked for them for a couple of years. I decided to kind of go all in on this platform of teaching and educating, mentoring, helping creatives grow and progress in their freelance businesses and in their agencies. And the last couple of years that I've been doing this have been some of the greatest times in my career. So I love what I do. I'm more Janda on Instagram, and I share a lot of content there and have some courses and things. And I just love talking about these things.
And I don't know how long it's been since I was on with you, Becca.
It feels like a long time, but
it feels like a while.
Mm-hmm.
I had normal hair last time I was on, people. This is quarantine hair. I've been wearing this ridiculous cap constantly, but my head was getting warm. So you get it in all its glory. But for anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Tom Ross, and I'm a long-time creative entrepreneur. And for the last 7 years, I've been running one of the largest design marketplaces in the world, Design Cuts, where we sell Procreate brushes, which I know a lot of the digital letterers out there love, and Photoshop templates and all that kind of stuff. I love it. It's my baby. But like Mike, I had that itch that I had to scratch in terms of my truest passion being helping my fellow creatives with their business stuff. I am the guy where my friend's brother's cousin mentions he's starting a business, and before I know it, I'm sat down having dinner with the guy writing business plans on napkins.
Yeah,
I really love this stuff. So as to Mike and I as a pair, we got to know each other because we were both building our personal brands and building community, helping fellow creatives with this stuff. We connected, we got talking, Mike slid in my DMs and we kind of hit it off. So I've got enormous respect for Mike and everything he does. We're very aligned in terms of our approach and our values. And when he suggested us doing our own podcast, I just couldn't say no because, as I say, I've just got a lot of admiration for his journey. And so we are now the Biz Buds officially.
It's been so fun. We just launched in January our podcast, and it's been a blast.
Yeah, because Tom, I feel like you needed a third podcast.
So this is how loyal I am to Mike. I dropped my second one, so it's now just the two. I committed to Mike.
Cool. Well, we'll definitely, I'm sure you guys will talk a little bit more about your podcast as we jump into the lesson and stuff too, because today we're just going to do a pretty I mean, I know you guys will share a lot of knowledge, but it's going to be a lot of information packed into a short lesson, and on your own platforms, you talk a lot about all of this stuff. So I know that all of it will be valuable today, but people following you and following that podcast will be even more valuable. So today, I guess we're just going to kind of jump right in with personal branding. I was explaining to you guys before we got on the call that my audience, a lot of them are like really talented letterers and calligraphers, but a lot of them also are just starting to get into building their businesses. And the nature of being calligraphers and letterers is usually that like you also are building a personal brand at the same time, because you are the face behind the art and the, you know, the services you provide. So I guess the best place to start is like, when you say personal branding, what are we even talking about? Like, dumb it down for us.
Sure. Have you got an official definition, Mike?
Well, I don't have an official definition. I can give you, I'll kick it off and give you a general overview of the concept. So branding in business is all about the essence of a business. It's the feel of a business. It's the way that the business is perceived in the eyes of the marketplace. So when you think of branding in business, a lot of times cars, hotels, let's use hotels as an easy example. You have hotel chains like the Motel 6, for those of you who have traveled around the United States. The Motel 6 low-end hotel, yes, it has a bed, but your door goes right out by your car, and there's no lobby, and it's just a low-end experience, but you can sleep there. And then you compare that brand to the Ritz-Carlton. And the Ritz-Carlton, you walk in and there's the greeter there, and they take your bags and they wheel them behind you, and they walk you up to your room, and they turn down your bed, and they put a chocolate on your pillow, and there's a whole experience there. And this is at the heart of branding. It's the perception of what the Motel 6 is versus the perception of what the Ritz-Carlton is. Now, the Motel 6 is a great brand. It's a great brand. It's just a lower end brand than the Ritz-Carlton, but it's still a great, memorable brand. And when we talk about personal branding, we're talking about that same exact application into us as people. What is the perception in the marketplace of Becca? What is the perception of Tom? When I say Tom Ross, what do people think? Well, they think, oh, it's that guy with 7 podcasts, and it's that, is it 7 or is it 17? I don't remember. But it's that guy, and he's a Brit, and he sounds so smart because he's got a cool accent, and he runs this great company, Design Cuts, and he's a serial entrepreneur since he was 12 years old. This is the essence of Tom Ross. And so that's his brand. He's embraced this brand, and he's built this brand, and people know him for this style of being. And that's what we're talking about with personal branding.
I was going to say, I'm just really excited to jump into this and talk about it more, or let you guys jump into it and talk about it more, because I think where a lot of beginners get stuck when they hear branding is just like my logo. You know, like my logo is the thing that represents me, and now I have a brand, you know, but there's so much more to it. And I know you guys are going to get into that, but I think it's just like that explanation of the hotels was really helpful.
Yeah, and there were 2 words Mike kept calling out there, which was essence and perception. And that is really how I think of brands as well. It's how other people perceive you. It's how they talk about you as well. So, you know, if a friend describes a company or another person, that, you know, market perception, as Mike said, that kind of is your brand. You don't always get to decide what your brand is. The market decides. Your wider audience and community decide. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah,
but if you don't decide it, if you don't intentionally decide what you want your brand to be, then you are at the mercy of the perception of other people. Yeah. And, you know, there's this quote that goes around on social media and Instagram posts and things. It's like, who you decide. It's the idea that your brand, your brand isn't what you say it is, it's what they say it is. And I see that quote shared a lot. And when I see it, I think, man, I hope people don't take that at face value, because it is a bunch of baloney. because
Yeah.
my brand is what I say it is and what I market it as. And then it's up to the people whether they believe what I'm saying or not. But it's not just whatever people want to think my brand is what it is. That's not true. You've got to intentionally define what you want your brand to be, and then go all in on sharing it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we are going to get in depth about how to do this and do it well today. And what I was going to say is, when you nail this, your audience and the market repeat back to you exactly what you planned. And this has been eerie to a point, because we did this, I think, pretty well with my company, Design Cuts. We had tons of meetings, hours and hours of meetings at the start, defining our brand values. And Becca, as you alluded to, it's so much more than your logo. It's the language you're using. It's the personality that you're imbuing into the brand. Our friend Jacob Cass did this giant diagram where he's like, this is what people think a brand is. And it was like the logo. And then it just expanded out and out and out and out. And there were like dozens of different parts. And people were like, wow, that's all branding? Like, there are so many component parts. And so we went through this whole framework at my company. And then what we started seeing in social media comments and emails, people would say nearly verbatim back to us what we'd written on that whiteboard. They'd be like, oh, I love you guys. You're so friendly and human, and you stand out in these ways compared to your competitors, and you make me feel this way. And then we would look back at our notes and be like, holy crap, that is word for word what we had on a whiteboard 12 months ago. And that's how the market sees us. That's when you know you've done a good job branding.
Yes, good job branding.
Well, you said that there are like a lot of pieces and frameworks and stuff that you go through to get to all of these things. And I know that you guys are going to talk about at least 5 of them, probably a lot more. But I think I'm just going to take my face off and let you guys get into it, because we're already getting into a lot of good stuff here.
Awesome. Let's do it. Thank you, Becca. Okay. So Mike, before we, I think we're kicking off with positioning and targeting. But just
authenticity.
Are we? I'm out of order then.
Yes.
Okay. Just before we get into that, I guess my one caveat would be, one of the reasons I love personal branding is because we both felt this. People often prefer dealing with people as opposed to companies. Have you felt this? So
Yeah.
when people think, well, should I not just be branding my company? There's tremendous power in having a personal brand, because it used to be something that was, reserved for celebrities and that kind of thing, right? Oprah has a personal brand. Beyonce has a personal brand. But now we are all a living, breathing brand. We are a walking resume, a walking CV, and how the market and our networks perceive us. It's a real thing now. This is not just like I'm posting what I have for dinner on my Instagram. Like, you almost operate like a company, but you are you.
This is why businesses use endorsement deals. This is why LeBron James is endorsed by Nike, because LeBron James's brand becomes synonymous with Nike's brand. They try and personify something that's not a person. You have Nike and it's the swoosh and it's your shoes. But what they do is they sponsor athletes like LeBron James and Venus Williams or Serena Williams. And they do this because then people can associate with a human being for that brand. And when you look at this happen, I mean, every major business is doing this. They do endorsement deals. Every perfume spray, does it smell any different because Kim Kardashian is the face of it? No, they could still sell it, but it's going to sell better because people are going to see it and they're going to resonate with Kim Kardashian and her personal brand, and then they're going to buy. So even the big businesses that are business brands understand the power of personal branding and how effective it is to sell a product or a service.
They do. And let's take this very quickly into the lettering world, because you'll get someone at the top of their game like Lauren Hom, for example. We talk about this a lot in our show, Mike, but how the very top tier of pricing is often reputation, right? It's not that you're competing on price. You're not even competing fully on quality. You can charge the most when you have that brand, you have that reputation. And so as much as Lauren's work is incredible, I would imagine she gets a hell of a lot of her work and the interest in her because she has built a brand. she's become a real name in the lettering world. You know, people associate her name with quality, with her particular style and so on. And so it doesn't, you know, you don't have to be LeBron James is what I'm saying. You can be your own micro celebrity brand within the field of lettering just as effectively.
Yeah, it's Tom Ross of Design Cuts. It's the same thing. You are the human face of the Design Cuts business. You've done the same thing with your business.
Yeah,
And
we
I think
see it time and time again. You get that public face which represents the business. Can you imagine if it was the Happy Ever Crafter and just this Wizard of Oz stranger behind all of it? But it's not. It's Becca, and everyone knows and loves Becca.
So this is what people have to do. This is why it's so important, and what you have to create for your business. You are going to be the face of your business. So embrace that. And so I guess we could start by digging into point number one, which is this idea of authenticity, the importance of authenticity. And every single human being in the world is different. There are no two people exactly alike. And so the start of personal branding is to recognize in yourself what makes you different, what makes you unique, and then embrace that about you. Embrace those things. Embrace your history, your personal origin, your ancestral history, where you live, the things you love. Embrace all of it, because all of it contributes to your personal brand. And when we can start to embrace that and authentically share the reality of who we are, that's when people are going to start to connect with us. That's when we're going to start to have a brand that is by nature different than everybody else's brand in the entire world, because nobody in the world is exactly like you. So you've got to embrace your own little quirky nuances, and that's the start of personal branding.
Yeah, I do love all of that stuff, but it's suffice to say it's easier said than done. This is a journey of introspection, really. And it is tough, you know, it doesn't come naturally. Often we are completely ourselves when we're hanging out with our friends and our loved ones, and then suddenly you stick a camera on us like this and we turn into a different person.
Yeah.
We might clam up and become really awkward. We might kind of talk more loudly or robotically than we normally do, whatever it might be. We're not being our normal relaxed self. And so the simple act of just being yourself, which is a fantastic soundbite, is something that might actually take you 3 years of consistent work to get good at. And I know I really struggled with this. I've talked openly about when I did my first selfie video on my Instagram. I was like, I'm going to do a personal brand. I'm going to put myself out there. I sat on my bed for 1 hour straight, filmed 100 takes, and I kept deleting. I was like, no, that's dumb. No, I can't say that.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to judge me. Delete. I was sweating. I was exhausted. It ended up being a 30-second video of me being like, hi, here's an insight into my day. Please like it, or, you know, some lame thing. And I put it out there and no one cared. No one cared apart from me. And so then I did another one and it got slightly less uncomfortable, and another one and another one. And then I did a series for ages on my Instagram called Daily Tom, where I would force myself to pick up my phone and do a one-take video and just say whatever happened in my day on the spot and then hit publish. And through doing this kind of thing for years, like, you know, we all podcast, Becca podcast, she puts out content all the time. You're not going to nail it on day one, but when you do it over and over and over again, now I can talk to you guys like I would, you know, my best friends. And, you know, I consider you guys really good friends, but you know what I mean? I can be completely myself in this moment.
I think one of the things that, like specifically for calligraphers and letterers too, when they think about, when we talk about authenticity, is that a lot of them, like, you know, when they get into this, they see how many other calligraphers and letterers there are trying to start, let's say, like a business in the wedding industry doing calligraphy, and they see kind of what works and what you're supposed to be like in order to get the wedding jobs, and what your portfolio should look like and what your website should look like. But they kind of sit there frozen thinking like, okay, well then how do I differentiate myself? And they don't ever think to put their own personality into it, and that's what would actually attract people to working with them. Like, you can be a really good calligrapher, but if you have no personality and if people don't connect with you as a person, then it's a lot harder to actually get a job.
Yeah. You know what the world doesn't need? Another, excuse me, I'm getting carried away here. The world does not just need another faceless hand doing the same lettering strokes and that's the whole feed. There's enough of those. You're not going to suddenly break out by being a hand that's 2% better at lettering than the last 5,000 hands that people saw.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think a lot of people think they just put a picture of their pretty calligraphy with their hand, like you said, and the caption can be like, "Loved this stationery suite I made," and that's good enough. But it's about the caption too, infusing your personality into it. So anyway, I like that one.
Yeah, and we're going to break down all of that. But I mean, I mentioned Lauren Hahn before. I think of Lauren, and I think of like her quirky sense of humor. I think of her putting croissants on her head to form a crown, right? I do not think of like, oh yeah, she's the girl with the hand doing the lettering on the Instagram.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Well, we'll get into differentiation here in a second, but I think, from this first segment, authenticity, embrace who you are and realize that you're not like anybody else. And that is the start of your personal brand. Our next segment that we're going to talk about is more the structured approach to creating a personal brand. It's this idea of targeting, positioning, and messaging, this trifecta of personal branding or of brand strategy. If you're at my agency, we did a ton of brand strategy work, and it was always this engagement of targeting, positioning, messaging that was the start of this brand strategy or marketing strategy. It's the strategic direction of a business from a branding or marketing standpoint. All right, so let's go with targeting. Let's start, because targeting is the start of it. And so I'll talk about this for a minute, and then Tom can talk about differentiation and positioning. The idea of targeting is you have to define who is your audience. Who are you wanting to reach? And then once you decide that, so if you're a calligrapher, a lot of calligraphers watching this, who is your target audience? Is it wedding planners? Is it birthday bash people? Is it greeting cards? I mean, there are a lot of different ways that you can monetize your talent as a calligrapher. What is your target audience? And once you define that target audience of a segment of the market that you want to go after, then you start to define what are the problems that they have in their business, in their life. What are the problems that they would actually spend money to solve in their life? And those are the two elements at the heart of defining a target customer. Who is it that you're trying to reach, and what problems do they have? Because that's the core of what's going to create your marketing strategy to reach those people. Now, from a branding standpoint, when we're talking this early in the strategy services of the creative services world, marketing strategy, brand strategy, business strategy, there's so much overlap. It doesn't really matter. We're just talking about strategic concepts. So define who you're trying to reach and what are the problems that they have. And then the next position or the next segment that you go to after that is this idea of positioning and differentiation, which Tom loves to talk about.
Yeah, I really do. And I think it's so important because it lets you cut through the noise. And I know every single lettering artist, every calligrapher watching and listening right now feels the pressure of this, right? You feel like you're in an ocean full of noise. And so defining that audience is so key. And this kind of fits somewhat into niching, which is something Mike and I are really passionate about. There are, of course, multiple ways to niche, but I would say as a lettering artist, as a calligrapher, you can niche by industry. You can niche by the kind of service you're offering, like Mike just alluded to. Are you doing weddings? Are you doing murals? You can niche in those kinds of ways. You can niche in terms of style. Are you doing brush lettering? Are you doing black letter, Gothic? Are you doing food lettering, like Becca, for example? So there's, some fantastic niches in the style of lettering. How about in your tone? I know I keep mentioning her, but I've got kind of a business crush on Lauren because she's awesome. But, she's got this real quirky kind of sarcastic sense of humor that she puts into the wording behind her lettering. And I think that's something that people often don't play with enough in the lettering community. They're too about the skills and the talent. They're not enough about the message, about the actual words that they're lettering. And that's a great way to cut through the noise because, I've seen letterers who letter things exclusively about feminism, for example, and break out in that market. And it's not down to the talent of their lettering, despite the fact they're very talented. It's because they build this incredibly engaged community around a very niche topic. And then also looking at things like oversaturation. So when you start to think in terms of these ways you can stand out, you can start to understand, okay, how busy is the market that I'm trying to enter, and how hard am I going to have to pull on the lever of differentiation? Because if I'm trying to do I don't know, brush lettering, and that's my big niche, well, that's what everyone's doing. There are millions of people doing that, and so you're going to have to work super, super hard to differentiate. But maybe if you're doing something like stop motion food lettering, like Becca, who I mentioned, well, there's significantly less people doing that. So you're not going to have to fight quite as hard to differentiate. Maybe you can differentiate just based on your style alone, and try and make a name for yourself in that industry. As Mike alluded to before, authenticity does link into all of this stuff, because the more you fully lean into yourself, as I like to say, you really own what you're all about, that will come through in your brand positioning, in your wording, and in your work. And quite often I talk about kind of dropping the curtain, dropping the filter. So that awkward moment I talked about, where we're not being ourselves, we kind of put the screen up and put out what we think the world wants to hear. Think of it as talking before you think. That's how I would like more people to operate. You've defined your parameters, what you stand for, what your brand's all about. And once you have that good foundation, I just want you to kind of spew it out there and not overthink it, and be more genuine, be more authentic in your work. And that will help break through in a world where everyone else is kind of censoring themselves.
So this idea, that's great, Tom. Thank you. And one of the things that I think is important about what you said, and maybe if we try and turn it into an actionable thing about creating your personal brand and this idea of positioning and differentiation, it takes some research. You've got to go, you can't, in 2020, most of you listening to this cannot decide to be the world's greatest letterer. It's too saturated of a market. It's too big. There are too many people like Lauren who have already climbed that mountain and established themselves in a way. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible, because of course it's possible. It's just a big, hard mountain to climb. But if you decide, like niching down food lettering that Tom was talking about, stop action food lettering, and you become known for that, then there's a lot less competition in that space. And so we're trying to find a position for you in the marketplace that your brand can monopolize. And in order to be able to do that, the first step is to do some massive research and a whole lot of brainstorming. So start researching how many food letterers are there out there that have what size of social media audience. What does the competitive landscape look like? And is there room for your personal brand or your personal business to fit into that position? And if not, then start digging deeper and try and find some other niche to occupy, because there's an unlimited amount of creative ideas available. So you've got to do your research, figure out where some of the voids are in the marketplace, and then go to fill that void with your brand or business.
One of the things I was going to say too, and like sort of ask you guys, is what's your opinion on, like, I know you're saying, if you've developed these skills and now you're going to try and make it into a business / personal brand. And so sit down and do the research to see what niche or niche, depending how you say it, you it's 2 against 1 here, Mike. Okay. But what I was going to say is, like, you're recommending doing all this research, but I feel like, and you both probably have an interesting perspective on this, being designers and artists as well, is like, at the beginning too, as an artist, it's not just doing the research, meaning like sitting down and typing in and finding the other artists, but like figuring out what you actually like to do also.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And that's really hard. It's really hard to like sit down and find a niche, just researching it, that also is going to align with what you enjoy.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot. I love a Venn diagram. So for me, the overlap is always passion, and I call it commercial viability. So essentially, what do you love, and what's the market going to pay you to do? And that is so key. And I know we're trying to cram like a whole lot in today, but to put this in a simpler term, what persona do you want to take on? Because in the world Mike and I operate in, which I guess, is marketing and business coaching for creatives, we have the figures that are like constant, like hustle, hustle, you've got to work your face off. And then we got the people who are like really kind of serious, like agency types and a bit intimidating. And then we have the people that are a bit more woo-woo and all about self-care. And then we got, we're trying to fill the space of being very approachable, but also actionable. There are so many different personas, and the same thing can be said in the lettering world. So I have coaching students where some, one that I'm thinking of, Lynn, she's trying to be like the craftswoman, where she's super meticulous and her clients, hire her and her audience follows her because she's got this kind of traditional, just love for her work and the process and makes it so beautiful, and does like gilding and all that kind of stuff. I know other letterers who want to be teachers, and so they're trying to just help beginners out and just be so, like Becca, exactly, perfect example. Becca's just so patient and great with her process of walking beginners through it and holding their hand, and that's a completely different style. And then you've got other people that are like unbelievably technical, and people are going to geek out with them about every little technical detail being perfect. None of them are right or wrong, and each of them is going to attract their own group of people that fit that character. And so that's why being yourself is so powerful, because you will turn some people off, but other people will be incredibly drawn to you because they'll be like, yes, they fit my style, I want to learn from that person or follow that person.
Tom, have you heard of ikigai? It's a Japanese word.
Yes.
Okay, so that's
what
basically what the Venn diagram you were talking about, but like on steroids with multiple all intersecting.
Yeah, it's like 7 parts or something, right?
Yeah, it's like what you love, what you're good at,
what the world needs,
and what you can actually make money doing.
Yes,
and like where those all intersect.
It's at the heart of, in the book Good to Great, the hedgehog concept is like a distilled down version of the ikigai thing, but that's at the heart of the success of any great business. Any great brand knows those 3 things, knows what you love, what you're good at.
I'll pop the diagram up on the screen.
And how do you monetize it, essentially?
I guess what we're talking about is when you look at the market, you might say, okay, well, there's 4 things that I really, really love. 3 of them have no hope. They're completely saturated. It's going to be impossible to break through, whatever it might be. This one over here, this has some commercial potential. And then once you kind of get that thing which is, business viable, then it's about layering yourself on top of that. So that's where you've got the foundation, which is like, I'm going to teach basics in brush calligraphy, or I'm going to be the food stop motion letter, or whatever it might be. Once you got that thing, then it's like, well, how do I infuse my personality on top of that? Because that's going to be what kind of gets people to stick around.
I can tell you exactly how, Tom. You just start telling dad jokes.
Yes.
But wait, this is a perfect point, right? Yeah. This is, and so I'm getting really passionate now, so I'm going to let Mike talk for like the next 15 minutes, but this is what I like to call micro branding moments. So you've got the macro brand, which is like, Becca, you're known for teaching quite often beginners lettering and calligraphy and doing a fantastic job there, but you have all these idiosyncrasies. It's like you like to think outside the box and draw on windows and cool stuff like that. You like to tell dad jokes. Those things equally draw people into you the same way your main business model does.
I mean, I can tell you that it draws people in because I have people every week emailing me and saying, I didn't get a dad joke this week. Like, where's my joke? They care more about that than my freaking tutorials, but that's beside the point.
It's so funny. I just did a dad joke on my stories like 2 days ago, and I had a great response. And
Can you share it?
And it's totally on brand. You want me to share the dad joke?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
How many tickles does it take to make an octopus laugh?
Tentacles.
Yeah, 10 tickles. Yes, 10 tickles. Anyway, I had a great response on this dad joke. But it's so on brand for me because for my personal brand, I want to be approachable. I want to be accessible. I have quirky sense of humor. I like to joke around and keep it light. I'm not stodgy. I'm not overly serious. And so how do I portray that about my brand when a lot of my content is very business heavy? It's business principles, business fundamentals, systems and strategies and things. But I infuse my humor into my content. I make up little funny little word bubbles that the client is saying in the post and things. And in my
the
stories,
bobbleheads.
the bobbleheads, another great example. I mean, I got a huge bobblehead collection, and I got 100 something bobbleheads, and they're all around, and I use them in my content, but it keeps it light and on brand and nerdy for me. And it resonates with the people who are out there who like that same kind of stuff. Now, some of the people who want it way more straight shooter or way more, well, I'm a straight shooter, but want it way more business
Serious.
and way more serious, I'm not the right fit. I'm gonna keep it a little lighter than that. But that's on brand for me. I'm not trying to be anybody else. I'm just embracing who I am and what is unique about me.
And Mike, don't you find it's such a great way to get to know yourself better? Because it forces you to be introspective. So through developing a personal brand, you feel so much more in touch with what you're all about as a person, and that bleeds into your wider life.
Yeah. Now, here's something that's interesting that happened to me. As my Instagram following, that's where I market myself the most. And it went from a year ago, now I had maybe 1,000 followers, and now I have 130,000 something. It's all been this massive growth in the course of this past year. I am way more confident sharing personal insights into my life with a huge audience than I was when I had 1,000 people, because I was so afraid that the 1,000 wouldn't like me that I was afraid to share who I really am. So I was way more reserved. I didn't do Instagram stories of me talking to the camera and things. I was afraid to do all those things. Now I'm way more confident. The amount of followers gives me the confidence. And so as you watch your personal brand and your confidence grow, you're going to see that proportionally, and maybe the same for you guys, you can mention in a second, but as your audience grows, it gives you more confidence that, hey, wow, a lot of people, they really do like me, and I can be quirky and funny and tell dad jokes and not feel embarrassed by it, because look at all the people who actually like it. And it instills confidence in my personal brand.
I feel like that's such an interesting point that I've never really like put my finger on, because you'd think, like, just logically, you'd think when you have 1,000 followers, it's not as scary to get on and do that. Yeah. And then when you have a lot more, it'd be like you just get gradually more scared that you have this huge audience. But it really doesn't work that way. It's like an opposite effect, like you said. And I'd never thought about that before. It's really interesting, but it's so true. Like I can definitely remember when I had 1,000 followers, for example, and I'd be terrified that those 1,000 were going to leave. Yeah. Whereas now I'm like, if 1,000 people leave, like that's fine. And that's like that's a privileged thing to say, that I have all these followers and I don't care if 1,000 leave, but like, it's not as scary when you have that many. Yeah.
It just instills confidence that that many people like you and see the real you. So you get a lot more confidence sharing the real you as a result.
Although I don't want to be doom and gloom here, because I agree with both of you, but the flip side is that validation, when it's more, and this is worse with a personal brand than a company even, you feel so personally tied to it. It's like, oh, I didn't get the normal amount of likes today, I must suck.
Yeah, and a lot of that's usually just the algorithm, but you don't have any.
I blame
exactly. It's Becca, like they don't love me after all. They hate me.
I would have gotten a lot more likes if the algorithm would have shown it to people.
Yeah,
that's what you start thinking.
Cool. So what's up next?
All right. Well, so we talked targeting, positioning. The idea of messaging. This is the last little piece of this bucket, and the idea of messaging is just defining who you are, and then how do you message that out to other people. And it's everything from the way you dress to the emojis you use in the way that you communicate with people. I'm throwing so many yellow heart emojis. It's like my speed dial emoji.
Is that your number one most popular? It
probably,
shows you.
It probably is, because
I think mine's the high five.
Yeah, high five, I think.
And then the basic smiley face. Because
mine is probably high five, and then yellow heart emoji, and then the LOL with tears. I think those
I just need to interject one thing. This one is high five to you guys?
It's high 10.
Okay,
What
that's
is
my
it to
most
you?
used emoji, and I always just think it's like praise hands, like, yeah.
Praise hands is like this.
No, that's like praying.
It's no,
Yeah.
this is thank you. This is the thank you hands.
Okay, we all have totally
Yes,
different
it is
opinions
the
on what
thank you
these
hand.
mean.
If
Wait, so
it's
you thought it was
praying,
like
then I'm
hyping
praying an
up? You
awful
thought
lot
it was...
Yeah.
in my comments.
Yeah, I do the prayer hands for like thank you. That means the
Yeah,
word.
thank you.
And then yeah, that is very much high five.
Okay, well, when I do this to
You're
you,
like,
it's
raise
like
the
I'm
roof.
just cheering you on. Yeah,
I'll take it, but that's so funny.
both are great. But
In fact, let us know in the comments,
yeah,
people, who's right. Is Becca with raising the roof, or
actually, you
Mike
know
and
what?
Tom with the
YouTube
high 10?
YouTube lets you put a poll now. I'll put a poll at the top. People can
Okay,
vote on the
That'd
poll.
be amazing.
It'll be interesting to see
Oh,
that.
honestly, if you're right and I'm wrong, I'm gonna be like, I was living a lie.
No, I'm on Tom's side on this. I think we got it defined right. Becca is taking the Canadian perspective, and
Just it being so encouraging and nice.
it might be, yeah.
You know
Anyway,
what? We're not. It's COVID times. We're not allowed to do high fives anymore. So it has to
virtual
be
high
this.
five. Yeah, virtual high five.
Just
I
a
do the
thumbs up.
virtual fist bump too, the two emojis. I do that a lot too. Anyway, but the point I'm saying is that it does matter what emojis you choose. And a heart emoji, a yellow heart emoji resonates. My brand is yellow and black. I mean, I had somebody take a picture of a yellow and black Lamborghini in Italy somewhere. And they took a picture of it because they were walking by, and they took a picture and they said, "Hey, look, it's more Janda's car." And I'm not in Italy, but yellow and black was so resonating in their brain, synonymous with me, that even a yellow and black Lamborghini in Italy made them think of me. So that's branding. That's at the heart of it. And you've got to define who you're going after, what your position is in the marketplace, and then how do you message that to your target customer.
Yeah, and I feel like this stuff can intimidate some people, but the way I think about it is it's pure fun and creativity. Use this as a creative exercise. Like, get out some paper and have a brainstorm and just write down all of the values. Ask your friends how they view you. What kind of person are you? And then think, how can I weave all of these traits into what I'm doing? And Mike gave some great examples there. It could be how you dress. It could be the music you have on in the background while you're lettering. It could be the dad jokes you make, like Becca. It could be so many things. It could be the tonality that you make in your post descriptions. There's a personal trainer I follow. Everyone else is being super serious. It's like, you got to track your macros, bro, and all this kind of stuff. And he's a big Harry Potter nerd. So every post he's like, "What's up, muggles? Like, if you want to get big like Hagrid, stick with me." Like, da-da-da. And he's like really funny in his post descriptions, but that cuts through. That makes me remember him instead of the 5,000 other guys. And so all these little things, they add up. And there is nothing more beautiful to me than when a brand gets that consistency and it feels so congruent and it all just flows together. It's such a cool thing when you look and you're like, everything fits, like from the tonality, their tone of voice, their logo, their colors, the content they're putting out there, their service offering, how they come across on podcasts. Like, when it all fits together, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And you absolutely can do that. This is not like big company stuff. You can spider graph this out on a sheet of paper and just start trying stuff and seeing what fills you and what doesn't, and just shift it towards that, that end goal.
All right. Should we move on to the next segment? And the next segment of our discussion today relates to patience and the idea that it's going to take time. I think when we were talking about this before we jumped on the podcast, but patience, to me, there are two pieces of patience. Patience number one in personal branding is be patient with yourself in figuring it out. It takes time to figure out the crowded marketplace you're trying to enter into and what is the specific niche that you can target inside of that marketplace. It takes so much time. I mean, when I started my agency, I didn't understand these principles in the first place, but I didn't even see it clearly until probably 5-6 years later. I started to really understand the niche that my agency was filling from a brand standpoint. So give yourself time, be patient with the time it takes to solve your personal brand. That's number
Mike,
one.
can I ask a question on that
Yes.
first point? Do you feel like it's ever done? Because for me, even like, you're nailing this right now, but I feel like in 5 years' time, you're going to be even more Mike Janda in your public persona than you are now.
Yeah, I do. I don't think it's ever done because the marketplace is always changing. The needs of your target customers are always changing. You're starting, I mean, your whole life is a life of self-discovery as it is. I understand myself as a human being a lot more today than I did 10 years ago. And 10 years from now, I'm going to have an even clearer understanding of who I am and how I think and what makes me tick. And so the evolution of us as humans, which you go to the essence of personal branding, and it's being an authentic version of yourself that is going to resonate with certain people in the world, that takes time to solve because you don't even know today. Going back to my agency time, my agency, at the start, I couldn't define it at the start because I didn't even know it was an agency. I was freelancing until that became overgrown. And then I started hiring people and it just became this organically growing thing. So it's always evolving. So have patience with that. Have patience in figuring it out and solving it. The other piece of patience is the patience of growth, of finding the people. And that I'll turn the time over to Tom to talk about that, because I think that was the original purpose of this point.
Yeah, Mike and I talk about this a lot, and patience really plays a part because when you're building a personal brand, it is not a linear line in terms of your growth. It's generally an exponential curve, which means it's practically flat for a very long time. And then it very, very slowly picks up, so slowly you barely notice it. And then eventually you start to find traction, and that's where it can really take off and build momentum. Most people give up in that early phase because it feels so tough and they don't see enough progress. And most people, that's where it just drives you nuts. It's so frustrating. It's like, why am I not growing faster? I'm not getting enough followers. I'm not getting enough clients. No one cares. I feel like I'm just kind of trudging through this. And that's why patience is so important. And I think it's essential that you enjoy that journey and don't make it all about the growth and all about the followers. And you recognize it will take a long time, and it should. Nothing worth having comes that easy. So as long as you enjoy making friends along the way and getting better and that introspection and defining your brand and just, enjoying being part of the lettering community, that is what you should be focused on rather than this incredibly slow upward curve. And it's funny, actually, we're talking about this now. I'm working on an Instagram post to give an analogy of this. And the way I think about it, let me know, guys, if this is a good analogy or a bad one. When you start, you're like a little rock asteroid thing floating through space, through this black abyss, and you feel completely lost and directionless. And occasionally you come across another little rock, and that like hits into you and kind of clamps onto your rock. So you get a bit bigger, and you float along for a long time, and you still feel directionless. And then you hit another rock, and you get a bit bigger. And the bigger you get, the more rocks come into contact with you, and you start to kind of grow and grow a little bit faster. And eventually you get big enough, you develop a gravitational pull, and suddenly you're not bumping into stuff's being drawn into you. And the more stuff that's getting drawn into you, that happens faster and faster. You get bigger and bigger exponentially until suddenly you're sucking in everything in your perimeter, and everyone around you knows you and is aware of you. And most people feel like that little humble floating rock going through space, not knowing what's ahead of them and feeling like they're never going to grow.
So that's patience. Next, we're going to talk a minute about marketing. How do you get your personal brand out there? So you've defined it, you've embraced your authenticity, you've embraced the idea of patience in solving it and patience in letting it grow. How do you intentionally market your personal brand? Tom, what metaphor do you have for us on this one?
So imagine you're Mike Janda and you just go outside, with your incredibly garish wardrobe. That's one way to garner attention.
It is a way.
Does that work?
It does work.
No, what techniques have we, for anyone watching, by the way, Mike and I love each other, really. Don't be concerned.
Yes. It's
we are Biz Buds after all. No, what kind of stuff can you do for marketing yourself? I mean, honestly, what we've covered already is the absolute necessary foundation, because in a second we can get into like distribution, how to get in front of wider people and how to pull on those various levers of growth. There is no point doing that if you don't get the foundation right. If your page is an inconsistent, incoherent mess, and your whole brand and platform is, no matter how much marketing you do, you're going to struggle to grow. So first and foremost, do invest the time. Don't skip ahead of it. Invest the time to figure out, your targeting, your messaging, your brand. Even if you don't get it perfect, at least have like a decent foundation to build on. Would you agree, Mike?
Yeah, definitely. And then, from a marketing standpoint, where is it that you share this brand yourself? Now, we're talking to a lot of creatives out there, a lot of hand letterers, calligraphers, this artistic, creative people. We are living in the greatest moment in Instagram history for artistic people, because the content variety is so thick. You can share individual posts, you can share individual video posts, you can share carousel posts, you can share Instagram stories. There's no limit to the type of content you can share right now to your audience through your phone. It is the greatest time. So for me, when we're talking about marketing, how do you get your personal brand out there? Man, Instagram is a great platform. It's not the only one. And so when you're looking at positioning yourself in the marketplace, you may say, well, there's already so many people on Instagram doing this. So maybe you should pivot and try and figure out how to do it on TikTok, because TikTok, it's not saturated yet. And you can become the king or queen of TikTok calligraphers. Maybe that's the place, because you got to try and figure out where that niche is. When I started building my Instagram audience, there was not business content like what I shared on Instagram for creatives. There were a ton of YouTube channels that people have been doing it on. There were LinkedIn groups and things, but Instagram was blue ocean. It didn't exist a year ago, a year and a couple months ago. And
The
that's
good old days.
that's why I chose it. I started to think, okay, it's not going on here, so I'm going to start funneling in there. And IGTV was actually starting to generate some traffic, but so I could do video content as well. But that's why I chose it. So you got to figure out where are you going to reach your audience? Where are they, and how do you reach them through these different platforms?
It's very good on social media. As much as we're saying, don't just be the, generic hand doing the lettering. If you position it right, and, James and Liz are great examples of that, you just want to zone out and watch them do it all day. It's really compelling content, and especially Liz with like her stunningly perfect nails that she does in every video, right? Yeah, that like magical thing she does. And so, yeah, I agree though. Go where your audience are, and this is, as you said, Becca, this is back to some of the earlier stuff we touched on. Most people jump in not even realizing that. This is why so many people just attract fellow letterers, and they're like, why am I getting no clients? It's like, because you don't know who your clients are, where they hang out, and then you don't put the effort in to get in front of those people.
Awesome. Okay, so there's a couple little nuggets in there about marketing. We didn't touch on attending these events. If you're trying to get your personal brand out there and you're a calligrapher, then go to the lettering events, go to these craft events and things. Get out there where those potential customers are, the people who care and love what you do. And you can go so far as to go and actually making a booth there. You don't have to just attend, but go and market your business there, because that's where the target customers are, the people who love what you do. This last segment, things to be mindful of when it comes to personal branding, things to be mindful of. Tom, give us a list of a few things to be mindful of to kick us off on this.
I'm like sitting here going, oh my God, he's going to say something that I'm doing that I'm going to have to stop doing.
I think you're doing awesome, Becca. You're a poster child of good personal branding.
We'll see.
Yeah, no, you are nailing it. So when I say things to be mindful of, I mean more like protecting yourself and your mental health and that kind of thing. So, try not to tie your ego and your happiness into your likes on Instagram. That's very dangerous ground, especially because Becca, you and Mike were both like, I feel so good the more likes I get, the more I feel confident in myself. I'm the same way. Most of us are, but that's dangerous ground where an algorithm shift suddenly has the capacity to wipe out a degree of that confidence. And
It did earlier this
purity.
year. There was like a
did,
weird
right?
Instagram smash where they stopped showing my stuff to people. And I was like, what's happening? Is this all over?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
started
suck.
January.
I'm an imposter.
Me too. I was getting 500 new followers a day for most of last year, and then January hit and it went down to like 100.
Yeah.
And I was like, what in the world? I guess my content sucks now. It was
Mhm.
good. It was good yesterday, and now it's terrible.
Yeah, no,
And then lo and behold, you post through it, and then 3 weeks later, algorithm shifts, and all of a sudden it starts to blow up again.
Yeah. So you just
So-
have to have that, like what's the word? Like I guess confidence to just
Perseverance,
keep
yeah,
going even if
confidence.
people aren't liking it. Cause it will,
Yep.
it'll come in waves, I guess.
You have
It
to go
does,
with
it
the
does.
mindset of, I don't care if people like it or not. I know that I'm sharing something of value that's authentic to my personal brand. And I don't care if 1 million people follow me. What I'm really looking for is a core community of people that love me.
Yeah.
And that's the best part right there. The people who will drive to go and see you speak because they love you. You don't need 1 billion people.
No.
You don't even need 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
All you need is your true fans. Discussed at length on Biz Buds episode 9. Sorry.
It was episode
Sorry, I'm
9,
such a plugging
was.
machine today.
Yeah.
All right. Another thing, and I hate to have to mention this, but is be open, be yourself, share yourself with the world as much as you're comfortable with doing, and be authentic, but do so with a degree of caution, because I've heard all kinds of horror stories where people share, views of their home or where they live, and people legit have stalked them, figure out where they live.
Yeah.
And it can be a scary world out there. And this makes me so sad to say it. I hear so much more of this stuff from the female members of my community. Because for me, I'm like, cool, I'll just plaster my face all over my Instagram stories. I'm not the one who's getting a bunch of douchebags then DMing me, sexually harassing me. And so I'm not in a complete position to be able to kind of teach on this stuff. I know from a brand positioning, putting yourself out there, authenticity, everything we talked about, it works. But if the other side of the coin with that is that you got idiots harassing you, then at least go in with your eyes open, be cautious, maybe, don't share what you're uncomfortable with, know how you're going to handle those people.
Yeah.
Don't be shocked when it happens, because sadly that is the world we live in.
It is. It's good advice. And my takeaway is that nobody is going to waste their time stalking Tom. Is that the takeaway? I don't remember. I don't know. Anyway, okay. Another thing to be mindful of.
I was expecting actual wisdom. Bullying, relentless bullying, as always.
When I feel it come on, I can't even stop myself from talking. All right. Another thing to be mindful of is that not everybody will like you. Not everybody is going to like your brand. Some people hate the Ritz-Carlton because they don't want a chocolate on their pillow. They don't want anybody coming in their room. They don't want to not be able to walk into the lobby in their flip-flops with Diet Coke spilled down the front of their shirt. They don't feel comfortable in that environment, so they don't like the Ritz-Carlton, and they will never stay there no matter if you paid them or not. They're more comfortable in the Motel 6, and that is just fine. So some people are not going to like you and your personal brand, and you have to embrace that. There is a percentage of people that you're just not going to connect with. I don't know what that percentage is. It is usually smaller than big, but there are going to be somebody. The bigger your audience,
so much, Mike. But
I've had haters.
Quite an abrasive character. So.
Yeah, I've had haters, and it hurts. A guy like me, it hurts because I genuinely love and care about my audience. I treat them like friends. I love when people connect with me from all over the world. It's one of the greatest things in my life. And it does sting when somebody sends me a hater comment or a hater message or something. And I've had a handful. It hasn't been a ton, but it stings when it happens. And you just have to embrace it no matter how much you care and how good you are and how much you love other people. There are people out there that are just not going to like you. and you
There are
have to
people out
embrace
there
it.
who are just going to complain about everything too. Like
Yeah.
it's not
Crazy,
even, it's
right?
not even necessarily that they don't like you. It's that they just don't like the world that day.
Yeah.
And it comes
Yeah.
out at you because you are,
Yes.
you know, you're the
An
person they're seeing. Like,
influencer.
and you
Yeah.
only,
But
you really remember the ones that are rude to you, not the ones that are nice to you. Right. And
that's the
like,
ones that sting.
and it's just like an example for me is I got an email one time back. Someone opted into my email list for a really sweet freebie on my website and then sent me hate mail saying that it wasn't good enough as a
Yeah.
freebie. And I was like, it's a freebie. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't like it, just don't, like, you know,
Don't
delete
use
it.
it.
Like,
Yeah.
unbelievable. And I was like,
It's
but at the same
that's
time,
so
I was like,
bad.
oh, now that person doesn't like me. And this was like 2 years ago. And now I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't care. That person doesn't
Yeah.
like me.
Yeah.
But
It's tough. It's tough when that happens.
it doesn't really get easier though at the same
Yeah.
time. Like,
Well,
you
I think
always
we're
remember
all
the
quite
people who don't like
similar.
you.
Like we all, you know, want our audiences and people to like us.
Hmm.
And it's physically painful when it happens. And it can happen even at a smaller scale, even if it's the odd one, like you say, Becca, you focus on it. And
Yeah.
my immediate thing is like, well, jump on a call with me and, you know, let's hash it out and let me
Yeah.
help you. That'll make it okay.
Yeah.
I can't just be like, well, screw you, see you later. See you
No,
later,
and like
hater.
when you do come from a place of like genuinely wanting to help people too, and that person comes at you in hate and you respond back in love or like helpfulness, a lot of the time they just like de-escalate right away and realize like, oh, that's a real person on the other side, you know?
Yeah,
But
it's
anyway,
true.
Yeah.
yeah.
They're not often willing to get on a call from my experience.
No.
That's always a fun exercise to play. Well, I've set up a Zoom. Do you want to come chat?
And they're like, oh no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. It's easier to just throw in the one-liner
Keyboard
hate
warrior.
message and
Yeah.
move on. Yeah.
My final point of caution would actually be like work-life balance, because I know we all have certainly a degree of being workaholics in this group, and especially if it's not your full-time gig, it can be a real plate spinning challenge. So Mike's now really focused on his personal brand, which is amazing and I'm super jealous of. But I got my company, which is my full-time job. I do my personal brand as my side hustle. So like all my content, looking after my whole community, the podcast I do with Mike, that's my hobby in my spare time. And so when you get to the end of a working day and it's like, holy crap, I'm having an anxiety attack and now I have to go, you know, respond to 200 DMs and put the content out and do all the things. It's super, super stressful at points, no matter how grateful you are for every message, no matter how much you deeply love what you do. It's real work, it's real stress. It's showing up every day, more or less, even when you're exhausted. And that really takes its toll, especially, like I say, if you're doing it as a side hustle or something around your company. It's a lot. And so the same way I want people to go in with their eyes open with potentially getting haters or getting harassed, go in with your eyes open that, yes, it's a great idea. It's one of the savviest business moves you can make. You know, we've got a playbook for how to do it effectively, but man, it's going to be more work than you probably ever anticipated.
And it doesn't turn off. That's the challenge, is that you can clean up all of your messages, and today and tomorrow there's going to be a whole new batch and you're going to feel a responsibility to get back to them. When you start your podcast to share your personal brand with the world, now you're on the hook to do a podcast every week for the rest of your life. So it doesn't turn off.
Why are we doing this again, Mike?
I don't know. Because you get passion around sharing, you get passion around helping people, you get passion around your mission. I think that is one of the things we didn't touch on very much, but what is the mission of your brand? We didn't hammer that home at the start, but that's really at the heart of where it all starts.
I could cut everything else out if you want and just have it be, the whole episode be that question, and then
you could just say figure out your mission, and then we just cut out the podcast end right here, because that is truly what it is. Nike, one of the greatest brands in the world, what is their mission? It is empowerment. That's their mission in one word. It's empowerment. They want to empower people to take control of their lives, empower people to excel in their sports. They want to empower people Nike embraced some of the civil rights issues in the United States with Colin Kaepernick and things over the last couple of years and kneeling for the flag, they embraced that from a marketing standpoint because it resonates with their brand of empowerment. And so what is your mission to the world? Figure that out and you're light years ahead of where most people are.
Well, okay. I think the best way to finish this off is like, if either of you have a dad joke left over that you want to tell, we could do that. And then we can just kind of like call it a day and tell people where to find you.
Oh, well, I'm
trying to think of any that are appropriate.
My default dad joke is, what do you call cheese that's not your own?
I know the answer, but I'm not going to be that person.
Go on.
Nacho cheese. Nacho cheese. And so, little side note, we named, when our teenage boys became teenagers, we bought a car, and it was the little beater car that they could drive to and from high school and stuff. And what did we name the car?
Nacho car.
Nacho. It's Nacho. Because it's Nacho Car.
I love it.
Is the name of the car.
Nice.
And you, Tom? Or are they all too inappropriate?
Yeah, I might have to say one. I don't know what you've heard from me before, but I ate a frozen apple earlier. Hardcore.
Nicely done. I thought Tom was going to fail that challenge. He nailed it.
Well, guys, I found a pen recently that can write underwater, but it can write a lot of other things too.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. All the viewers just
nailed
dropped
it
off.
Yeah, the episode's over. Okay, well, thanks a ton, guys. That was so much value, but I know that you guys have so much more on your podcast and on your own channels and everything. So maybe we'll start with Mike. Where can people find you? And then Tom, and then the two of you together.
You can find me at More Janda on all social channels except for TikTok, where I am even more Janda. And I have one TikTok post. Don't even look me up on TikTok. I'm not really on TikTok. But at More Janda on Instagram, or michaeljanda.com, also good.
Okay.
Awesome. I'm at Tom Ross Media on, I think, all social platforms, tomross.co.co. Where you can get my free guide on niching. And most crucially of all, I do a weekly podcast, Biz Buds, with this fine gentleman. And I'll be honest, Becca, it was a challenge to like squeeze so much in today because it was almost so many topics in one. But we go deep in each episode. We try and make each episode like an actionable course where you just take notes the whole time and can actually apply it to your creative business. So yeah, it would mean the world if anyone popped over and checked that out. I promise it's super, super valuable.
I promise too, because I've listened and it definitely is. So I definitely encourage people to go over there.
Thanks so much.
But I think that's pretty much it. I feel like we're going to have a 2.0 of this at some point because like you said, there's just too much to cover, but that's a really solid start for people, I think.
Thanks so much, Becca.
Thanks, Becca. We appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Having your podcast and having fun.